Good Friday. Presentation. So opening chart is from McKinsey, and it's where all the money's at, man. What is all this money? The best way of understanding it is to imagine that it is baby boomers' savings. It is their pensions, all the money that they've stocked away, besides being in their houses, for a rainy day or for their retirement. The money is somewhere, and it is generally always to be found in here somewhere. Global financial stock has surpassed pre-crisis heights, now totaling $212 trillion. That's in 2010, and it will have gone up marginally since then. You can look along the top of these sticky ups, and there's a 175 which is over 2008. That is when the stock market crashed and made the number go down. So the light coloured numbers on the top are the stock market capitalisation, all the money that's in the stock market. When I say in the stock market, I'll talk a bit more about the stock market. But have a look, 2007, the stock market of the world, the stock markets of the world are worth 65 trillion, and they went down to 34 trillion. But look below on 2007 and 8, 30, 32, 41, 41, 8, 8, 15, 16, 43, 45. Nothing else changed to any great degree. Nothing else changed. Right, stock market. Let's have a pretend and semi-correct way. Facebook. Facebook just went to the market. Now it's Zuckerberg or something, Mark something, that owned the company beforehand. So we'll simplify and say he had the complete rights to the company. The courts had done all the court cases and said that he had 100% right. He had 100% ownership of the country. All the people that brought him a coffee when he was writing up the code for Facebook don't have a share, and he owns the lot. He privately owned the lot. Now, he has now taken Facebook public. I believe, it doesn't matter if these are not quite true for Facebook. He's got a controlling share, but in the hypothetical one I'm doing now, he's got just over 50% of the shares. So Facebook shares did actually go for about $40. So let's say they decided, and that's the investment banks and Zuckerberg got together in the room and decided to sell 1 billion shares in his private company. And it was carved down the middle and sold into the stock market as an initial public offering, an IPO. Now, the IPO goes to the stock market, and there are now half the shares, so 500 million shares were available to be bought by the public. Facebook is being taken public. So just under 500 million shares are sold to the public at $40, making Facebook worth in total $40 billion, making Zuckerberg at that time worth just over $20 billion. He's not sold his shares, he's maintained a controlling stake, but just owning the shares in the beginning, because he had them all. The 50% that are being sold, or just under 50%, are his shares, and he's selling them off at $40 each, 500 million of them. So he is now worth technically $20 billion, because other people have paid $40 billion for half his company. Right. But of course he's not worth 20 billion, he's just got 500 million shares in Facebook. And his worth, it isn't really his worth, but it's a number that Fortune magazine will make go up and down, will be calculated by what other people are now selling Facebook shares for. Okay, the IPO could be, there's no reason it, how should I say this? That one IPO taking the Facebook public might be the only dealings that Facebook ever have again with the stock market. The stock market price from there on in really has no direct bearing on Facebook. Of course, but this is being very simplified. There are reasons and movements why it does, but really it doesn't. It makes, as people buy and sell the shares in the casino stock market, they're just going up and down and selling and whatever. The 20 billion that the public bought went to Zuckerberg as cash. He has got that now to use in his own company. He is technically worth the other 20 billion if he sold his shares, but he just sits on his shares and then uses that 20 billion to make Facebook into what the people that bought the shares think it's going to be worth. He's got that money. Now, whether the shares go up to 400 or go down to 4 cents makes no difference. If the shares on the casino stock market go down to 4 cents, that does not affect Facebook directly. They can go to zero. It does not affect, that doesn't make Facebook bankrupt if the shares go to zero. But Facebook probably would be bankrupt because there would be a reason that the shares went to zero. But the shares that are out there can go whoop up or whoop down, and it has no direct effect on Facebook at all. It is purely between the private people selling through the stock exchange, private people exchanging either money and bits of paper for Facebook stock, and that's all it is. And all of that adds up in the world now to over $50 trillion throughout the world's stock markets. You say why people do it. The stock market generally for hundreds of years has been a bottom left top right type of thing, and you can generally sell your stock on for more. We can talk about, you can get, doesn't matter, nothing else. It generally works. Okay, all the other things, the other 75% of things, public debt securities, that would be government debt, treasuries, gilts, or government sovereign debt, financial institution bonds, that is surprisingly large, let's note, at 42 trillion, more bank debt out than sovereign debt. Non-financial corporates, Procter & Gamble, securitized banks, loans outstanding, cars and houses. Down at the bottom, nearly the same size as the stock market, non-securitized loans outstanding. So stock market is 1/4 of the world's money markets, where the money is out there, where the baby boomers' pension money is. This is real money. People think they own all these bits of money. If somebody's bought a treasury, it's in that second one down. If you've bought etc., etc. Okay, it's all in there. Actually, there's probably more, but that does us for a very good roundup of where the money is. Just over 200 trillion in the world. 1/4 being stock markets, and that's just wobbly about money, just people buying and selling. In the United States, everything has gone up for the last couple of decades because money is being funneled through IRAs. It's pension money going into the stock market. As long as everyone goes into the stock market, the chances are that there will be another sucker, as the Ponzi scheme says, there will be another sucker because more people next year will earn money and put money via their IRA into the stock market and keep stock prices up. But it's all private interaction with no direct linkage to the actual company involved. Right. And they technically are the owners of the company. Every time you buy a share, that's technically an ownership part of the company. Zuckerberg, he's kept the controlling share at 50 point something, but each little part of that 49 point something is a balancing part of Zuckerberg's 50. And there will be a time where Zuckerberg will sell down and the rest will have more than him, but the rest is carved up so much that it's mainly obviously the pension companies, banks and insurance companies that then get on the board of the company, Facebook let's say, because they are the principal holders. Like Vanguard or something would be the main owner of Facebook and would probably get to sit on the board because they were the biggest owner. Moving on. Over in Europe, to give us an idea of the inflation years again. This is from the European Central Bank. It is balance sheet items, quarterly, euro area, neither seasonally nor working day adjusted, credit institutions, banks, loans, total. Okay, bank loans total, that'll do us. From 1998, from the idea start of the euro, and you can see bottom left, top right, started at 8 trillion, is now at 18 trillion, 18.5 trillion. Now I've done a little in draw, I've carved it up. You can see where it's gone bottom left, top right, and then the credit crunch started and it stopped going up. These are bank loans in the euro area. So I've put a line down there, and looking that away towards the end, it's gone up 1/2 trillion. It's gone up, sorry, 500 million. 500 million of loans have gone out since the start of the credit crunch. Then looking backwards at the same sort of time, I've carved it down and there was 5 trillion. 5 trillion in loans went out in that same section of time, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 years. 4 years since the credit crunch, loans have gone up by 500 million. Before the credit crunch, they went up 5 billion. Sorry, I think I've got billions and trillions mixed up. 5 billion before. It wouldn't be 5 billion, it'd be a lot more than that. 500 billion. 500 billion since. 5 trillion before. Yep. And you can see before that it has ramped up, but the other 5 trillion is back to the start. So it's gone 5 trillion in that first ramp up, and then 5 trillion in the years before the credit crunch. These were the inflation years, and in the 4 years since the credit crunch, these are now the bloody hell we are in stinking trouble years. All right, where do I going next? This is in German, volumed non-performing loans, but that is basically it's PricewaterhouseCoopers Germany have done an audit of the European banks and have found over €1 trillion in non-performing loans that aren't being paid back as per the contract. 1 trillion in Europe. And the trouble is, with that now flat top on there, great amounts of money aren't flooding into Europe, so the chances of those non-performing loans turning performing is vanishingly small. And what we have, well, have I got one more thing? Yeah, one more thing, but it doesn't matter. When you've got your non-performing loans, you've got a central bank that's panicking like hell. The banks are panicking, the central bank's panicking, and it's a question of what to do. Governments are panicking, everyone's panicking. In Europe, because the banks, because that's the way it's been, it's tradition in Europe that banks of a certain country buy their own country's sovereign debt. What the central bank is being manoeuvred to do is to keep up the price of that sovereign debt so as to keep the bank's balance sheet not completely falling apart, because obviously their loan book's well in trouble, as we can see by the over $1 trillion in non-performing loans, but the rest of their assets have to keep up. Now, lots of their assets are sovereign debt, so the central bank and governments are trying to keep that sovereign debt up on the European banks, and it's basically a busted bubble. All the money's gone out of the peripheral sovereign debt and into the core sovereign debt, and it's kind of balanced out at the moment. But the with no interest being paid on the core debt, the same for UK and US, as in very, very low interest rates, it's a bubble as well now in the safe sovereign debt, and the peripheral is just flapping in the breeze. So the governments and central banks are well panicking that the banks have got these non-performing loans, and they've got these assets, some which have performed well, the core ones, because the price has gone up as the interest rate's gone down in time. But they know that the price has gone up with the interest rate going down, but the price going up is a bubble. And that bubble in sovereign debt, in safe sovereign debt, is one day going to blow. And if that blows, with the non-performing loans, there'll be nothing that the central banks can do to save the European banks, and that will explode out onto the American banks as well. Because all that central banks can do is 5 and 5. It can make banks liquid. It can take sovereign bonds. It can take non-performing loans. It can take anything off the asset side with a haircut and replace it with money. But it's in and out. It's the same. It's not giving them anything. It's just replacing. And it's accounting. It's 5 and 5. The central bank cannot improve numerically the bank's balance sheet. It can make them liquid, but it can't make them solvent, because it can only do 5s and 5s. On the asset side, goes onto the liability side as well. It can only do 5s and 5s. Liquidity can come from the central bank, but solvency can't be cured by the central bank. On the big question, how will it be, this thing? All these non-performing loans, all these government, are now non-performing loans, like a Greek bond is a non-performing loan, but I don't think it's actually even put in the non-performing loan side. I'm not sure about that. What can be done with all these people that are not going to pay because the future does not look rosy? I could do a whole long video on it, but just think of it two ways. Anybody that's talking about central banks and providing liquidity and have this idea that central banks can cure solvency, they're just wrong, but that's what they're talking of. If they're talking about that and governments spending on stimulus and all that sort of stuff, that is to protect the debtors. If you're ever here on anywhere talking about austerity, that is to protect the debtors, and that just as a very quick and easy guide to what goes on. If it's austerity, it's trying to squeeze blood from a stone and not print money and not make extra money and not dilute the money that the debtors have. The debts are owed and they're due to be repaid, and the debtors don't want that money paid in slurred money, devalued money. They want it paid back in good money. Debtors want deflation. No. Creditors want deflation. Debtors want inflation and loads of money all over the place so they can grab it, so they can pay their debts, but they will be paying their debts in debauched money. Basically, austerity is for the creditors, and any talk of central bank printing or government stimulus is for the debtors. Yeah, debtors, government and central bank. Creditors are the ones that are forcing austerity. It won't work, by the way, what the creditors are doing, and I don't think it's going to work what the debtors think they're doing either. And this is why it's also wonderfully interesting to watch. It's great tension in the debtor-creditor battle, and they're both pulling and trying to force through policies that will be best for themselves, but neither policy is going to be good for anybody overall. It's another classic tragedy of the commons. Not that there is an answer, unless you like the things like the Steve Keen answer, which is give money to everybody to pay the debts off In other words, give the money to the debtors and the creditors. But in the end, in that, it would be the creditors that would be losing and the debtors winning slightly. But there's no easy answer. Anyway, that's the end of that. Bye.